All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar with Ketch. Thank you so much for joining us for Future Proof Your Privacy Program. This is the second webinar in a three-part series hosted by the Ketch team. And we specifically are hosting this series as a follow-up to our exhibition and presence at the IAPP Global Privacy Summit in DC last month. So if you were at the summit, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to continue chatting with you. And if you weren't, thank you for finding Ketch and joining this series with us. It's a pleasure to meet. So this is the second session in the series, and our topic for today is consent management and orchestration, talking all about how to future-proof your program relative to this critical discipline within the privacy program. So let's go and start with some quick intros. My name is Colleen Berry. I'm the marketing lead at Ketch, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Sahidi, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining and listening in. I am Sahidi, a solution engineer here at Ketch.
Thanks, Sahidi. So in case any of you on are not familiar with Ketch, very quick background. We're a data privacy software platform, and we help businesses and brands to simplify privacy ops and use responsibly gathered data for business growth. We're headquartered in San Francisco. We also have an office in London and customers across the globe, US, Europe, everywhere. Most of our customers choose to work with Ketch because of the fresh approach we take today. There's a lot of legacy platforms in the data privacy space, and Ketch is truly a next-gen solution, which leads me to what we're here to talk about today, modernizing one of the foundational components of your privacy program, consent management. So let's go ahead and get started. If you do have any questions along the way, we would love to take questions live. Please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A function of the Zoom webinar. So starting with consent management and orchestration, our flow for today, we're going to talk a little bit about just teeing up what is consent and how does that play into your company's privacy promise and the trust your consumers expect from you. So we'll talk a little bit about some market research and stats we have that really emphasize how important the consumer voice is, the consumer's desires are in your consent journey. And then from there, we'll actually talk about consent across the consumer journey and how it should play a central role in your program. Talk a little bit about how we handle that at Ketch and how we recommend you approach best practices when it comes to consent management and orchestration. So let's go ahead and start with talking about trust and your privacy promise, what your consumers expect and hope to receive from you when it comes to consent. A great way to level set is to think about just at the top here, what is privacy consent, right? One of the most foundational ways we think about it, it comes from one of the grandfather privacy articles and regulations out there, which is of course GDPR. So according to GDPR, how we define consent is any freely given, specific, informed, and unambiguous indication of our data subject's wishes, our person's wishes, by which they, by a statement or clear affirmative action, really signify agreement to the processing of data relating to him or her. So I think the thing that really comes across in this definition from GDPR is really this idea of transparency, right? There should be absolutely no ambiguity in what our consumer wants to see from us, what they're agreeing to from us, and then what they actually are agreeing to process their data relating to. So how we translate that as Ketch is kind of thinking about first principles. How do we actually translate this GDPR definition of consent into basic principles of what we want to see? So on the next slide, if we kind of walk through foundationally what consent should mean to the business. One, it's about handling their data responsibly. At Ketch, we think through 4 different kind of responsible data practices at a high level, which would be transparency, data minimization, right? Only collecting as much as we need. Data retention, making sure we're storing data for appropriate amount of time. And then lastly, data sharing, making sure we're respecting consumers' wishes with sharing it across other organizations and third parties. So that's number 1 for us, right? Handling our consumers' data responsibly. Number 2, following through on what we say in your privacy policy, in your notices, in your preference centers. If a consumer agrees or disagrees to different type of data sharing, it's really critical that as a business, you set up the mechanisms and controls and processes to do exactly what they want you to do and are asking for you to do in that collection standpoint, right? And Sahidi will get more into this later. It really comes down to, yes, we're respecting their wishes at the point of collection, can we also respect their wishes in the actual usage of that data throughout our business and throughout our data ecosystem? That really relates to this third point we have here, which is make it so everywhere now, right? So when a consumer makes that privacy choice on your website, are you making it so throughout your data ecosystem, including not just internal systems, but external and third-party partners? And then lastly, speaking of keeping consumers at the heart of this and it's central to it, we want to make sure that we're providing a simple to use and accessible experience, putting them in control. So that means using understandable language, right? Keeping it to an 8th grade level, using things that consumers can easily understand and answer questions to. How much of my data do you have? What are you doing with it? How are you collecting it? How are you storing it? Back to those responsible data practices at the top, right? Making those easy for consumers to understand. Now, one of the sort of foundational ways that we think about the consumer opinion here, and something that's really shaped how we think about consent at Ketch, is a study that we conducted in partnership with Magna Global Media Trials late last year. We surveyed 5,000 people across the US and UK on 2 areas of focus. One, we asked individual people, consumers, what do you think about data privacy? Do you value it highly? Are you interested in it? What do you think about how consumers use your data? And then 2, we looked at how do people's opinions on data privacy impact business data practices. We learned some really interesting insights that inform specifically our thoughts on consent. So to start, if we move to the next slide, we learned that 77% of people are concerned about how their data is being gathered and used. So large majority of consumers are really worried about how companies are handling their data. And what this boils down to is 2 distinct reasons here. It comes down to lack of transparency and lack of control. So there's a lot of things we see in the market that point to and really are supporting points for these findings, right? We see consistent articles in the media about different breaches relative to security and or privacy across companies, which are especially prevalent in the US, but we see across the globe articles on breaches. We see articles talking about the length of privacy policies today and how impossible it is for consumers to read through and really grasp all of that info. So there's a lot of key points in the media that really point to and validate these stats, that 58% of consumers say, I don't know where my data is going and how it's being used. And 75% of consumers say, I don't feel like I have full control over my data. So what we really see here is that there's truly a massive opportunity for businesses that want to get this right? Imagine if your business can be one of the companies that is actually giving people the transparency they're looking for, and also giving them the control to enact the privacy choices they want to make. So there's a big opportunity for businesses who want to get this right to fall on the right side of where consumers want their brands and partners to be. Because at the end of the day, consumers today are truly treating privacy as a brand value and beginning to vote with their wallets, right, with their dollars. And we're seeing that companies that get this right are actually seeing an uptick in purchase intent and uptick in revenue when they treat privacy as an important brand value and give it the respect that consumers want it to have. So with that, I want to hand it over to Sahidi to dig a little bit more into this consent journey and how it plays into your modern tech stack. So Sahidi, take it from here.
Thanks, Colleen. So I just wanted to hone in on these 2 themes that Colleen just mentioned. Theme 1, transparency, and theme 2, providing your consumers full control of their data. Now, that sounds straightforward. And organizations back in the day thought this could all be solved for by throwing a cookie banner on their website. Well, it's 2023 now. The modern consumer engagement stack has gotten massively complicated and complex, and a cookie banner just won't cut it. Organizations are using so many different types of data, such as zero-party data, first-party data, second-party data, and even third-party data. They're engaging with their consumers in different ways through social media platforms, e-commerce marketplaces, retail media networks, and sometimes even connected TV services. In turn, customers and consumers are engaging with organizations in different ways as well, such as call centers, through chat functionalities, by engaging and signing up in loyalty programs. And as all of this is taking place, data points, data assets are being collected in siloed, centralized locations, such as a data lake, a data warehouse. Organizations leverage, systems like customer data platforms to support these different data assets. And really, to think about consent management, all of that sits in the central of all of this. And in the Ketch world, when we say consent management, it really comes down to consent orchestration, which means data collection and data usage. So when we say data collection, it means, are you collecting user level personal data at the right time, in the right way, in a compliant manner? That's data collection. Data usage is, what can I do with this user level, this consumer data in a compliant way? Can I use this data for analytics purposes? Can I use this data for targeted advertising purposes? So what does this look like once Ketch is implemented? Let's run through a typical customer journey. So here we have Laura. And at the end of the day, every organization wants to put Laura in control of her data and her privacy choices. So step one of this is Laura would visit an app or a website for the first time and is presented with relevant privacy choices based off of the regulations enabled. So what I mean by that is, if Laura is coming from California, she's a resident of California, she would see a CPRA-centric experience. If Laura is a resident of France, she may see a GDPR-centric experience. Now, when Laura comes to this website, again, you want to ensure she has full control and she can select the preferences that she wants to. So she'll decide to opt in, opt out of various purposes of why data is being collected and processed. And as these selections take place, this is where Ketch offers a dynamic way to automatically collect her data and ensure tags fire appropriately based off of what she's opted into. So that's part one of consent orchestration, to really support this notion of data collection. And as these preferences are being updated, changed, modified over time, these preferences are constantly being recorded and tracked in the Ketch permit vault. Think of this as your organization's audit trail to ensure that these signals are being stored in one single source of truth. And step 4, so now that you have an understanding of what Laura's opted in, opted out of, you need to understand what you can do with that data. Through the power of Ketch APIs, what we have the ability to do is push these consent signals downstream to different third-party systems, such as your ad tech or marketing systems. And so the beauty of this is, if your marketing team goes into those systems, they will automatically know Laura's actually consented and is allowing us to leverage her data for the purpose of analytics, for the purpose of site personalization. And this supports the second part of consent orchestration through Ketch, which is data usage. So very quickly, let's bring this all to life in a brief demo. So here's a demo website, Exonic, and I'm a consumer coming to this website. And I'm a resident of California. I'm coming from California to this website. And right away at the very bottom of this page, as you can see, you see this experience titled The Privacy Promise. And I know this is a CPRA experience because I see that do not sell messaging showing up within the buttons. Now, the location of the banner, the size of the banner, the fonts, the colors, even what you want to say within these buttons can be completely customized to your brand guidelines. And to quickly show you another example of this experience, let's shift gears a little bit and go to the Exonic website as a resident from the country of France. Now, as you can see, the location of the banner has completely changed, and the banner is a lot more extensive due to the regulation of GDPR, where you have to show transparency and amplify exactly why data is being collected and processed. And this is where the power of the Ketch purposes comes into play. Now, under GDPR, because the consumer, I right now as a consumer, have not opted in to any of these 4 purposes, such as the purpose of analytics, data sharing, personalization, and targeted advertising. If I go to a tag explorer, this is just a browser extension. As you can see, the only tags firing on the page right now are the essential tags. Various third-party tags that could potentially capture my data or collect my personal data of any sort are not firing on the page currently. Now let's go ahead and hit accept all and see what happens. Now, if I go back to Tag Explorer after I've opted in to these various purposes, now various tags such as the Facebook pixel, the HubSpot, the LinkedIn, the Marketo, the Optimized Lease of the world are now starting to collect my data because I, as the consumer, have provided consent to do so. So this is part 1 of consent orchestration, where data collection is happening in a compliant manner. Now that we have a fundamental understanding of this, let's jump into part 2 of consent orchestration, where you push these opt-in signals downstream to a system like Marketo. So Marketo is a common system that marketing teams within organizations might leverage. And as you can see within this Marketo instance, my first name, my last name, my email address is being captured. And through the power of the Ketch's pre-built APIs, if I scroll to the bottom, based off of what I've opted into, those specific purposes have automatically been flagged within the Marketo instance, such as analytics and site personalization. So now this supports part 2 of consent orchestration, where your marketing team can go directly into a system like Marketo and will know how to leverage and use Sahidi's data or any consumer data the right way in a compliant manner. So that's part 2 of consent orchestration. And finally, just wrapping things up, some best practices. I really wanted to keep this simple, right? At the end of the day, as an organization, your objective is to provide a consistent and easy and inclusive experience for your consumers. And as I showed you, you can do so with Ketch. And all of this can take place through the power of orchestration, which we just ran through. Leverage Ketch as your single source of truth for consent and preference choices, but also leverage the pre-built API connections that Ketch has built to ensure these signals are not only being stored within the Ketch platform, but also being sent downstream to the appropriate ad tech, martech, and data systems that your organization might be leveraging. And finally, I love to end with this, collaboration. Back in the day, whenever someone was building out a privacy program, organizations would say, well, that's the legal team's responsibility. No one else should be involved. Well, times have evolved as consent has also evolved. And when we think about collaboration now, privacy is a truly team sport where legal, tech, IT, and marketing stakeholders can all come together and really think through how they should build the appropriate privacy program that aligns to all of their priorities and their KPIs. And as you're aligning your data needs to the privacy policies, the Ketch platform is so intuitive where multiple stakeholders can log in, access, and leverage the platform, where the collaboration starts to become fairly organic. So I wanted to end there and really hone in on that note where privacy is truly a team sport. And through the power of orchestration and through the power of automating your consumer experience choices, Ketch is really a powerful, powerful technology that you can leverage to create the appropriate privacy program. And Colleen, I wanted to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tahiti. That was a great overview. Really appreciate that. So thank you all so much. This takes us to the end of our content for today. Sincerely appreciate y'all joining us. As promised, and as a thanks for joining us on this webinar, we will send each of you a little lunch on Ketch virtual gift card. So please watch out for that email. It'll come from a member of our Ketch sales team. They'll be in touch to get you that gift card and also ask if you have any questions. On that note, if you'd like to see a more kind of customized demo or have a more customized conversation about consent and management and orchestration for your business, we would of course love to support that. So just let our sales team member know when you hear from them if you want to schedule a one-on-one follow-up to this webinar. And with that, I'll say next week we'll have our final session in this series, which is a little dive into data subject rights and how you can potentially modernize the data subject rights processes within your organization from a best practice standpoint, but of course using Ketch as well, if that makes sense for your business. So with that, I think we'll close for today. Thank you, Sahidi. Thank you all for joining us and hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.